So, good evening, everyone. Hello and welcome to the monthly knowledge webinar conducted by Kelp along with the Indian Lawyers Association. For all those who are here on this platform for the first time, let me quickly brief you about the monthly knowledge webinars. So, we at Kelp conduct this monthly knowledge webinar wherein we choose a topic from the PoSH Act or related subject matter and discuss over the same. We also call upon industry specialists as panelists to share their views and observations on the chosen topic. Speaking about the ILA, the Indian Lawyers Association has chapters all over India, requesting all the lawyers and law students present here to join in and help the community grow. Our topic for the day is creating safe spaces and addressing men's mental health concerns or needs in the PoSH investigations. Very recently, we celebrated International Men's Day, and that draws our attention to a topic which is very less spoken, that is mental health challenges faced by men during PoSH investigations at workplace. While the Act primarily focuses to protect women against harassment, the dynamics of such investigation has equal psychological effects on all the involved parties, including men. These concerns often go unnoticed and unaddressed due to societal biases and the idea of being perceived as weak. Recognizing and addressing these issues is vital to ensure a safe and equitable working environment for all. Today, we shall aim to highlight the importance of creating safe working spaces for men when it comes to PoSH investigations, while ensuring fairness and compliance with law. As panelists, we have two extremely talented and experienced individuals with us today. Speaking of the panelists, I would like you to introduce to our first panelist for the day, Sarthak Sachdeva. Sarthak, a senior UX UI designer with a master's in computer science, brings extensive international experience from Fortune 500 companies like CBRE and BMW. A passionate DEI advocate, he focuses on queer visibility, neurodivergent inclusion, combating racial biases, mental health awareness, and fostering sensitive communication. Hello and welcome, Sarthak.
Thank you, Sakshi.
Our next panelist for the day is Dr. Dharni Kota Suyodhan, a visionary and result-oriented lawyer and leader with over 20 years of legal expertise spanning multinational corporations and diverse industries, a strategic executor known for minimizing risk, driving business growth, and enhancing scalability through process optimization and standardization. Recognized with an honorary PhD from University of Berkeley, California, for significant contributions to society, particularly in social service. His notable accomplishments include co-authoring Professional Ethics and Morals, a prescribed textbook, which is delivering over 1,000 global training sessions on prevention of, and also delivering over 1,000 global training sessions on the prevention of sexual harassment, a sought-after speaker, trainer, and panelist with appearances on TV news channels and teaching engagements at institutions. Committed to fostering entrepreneurship and legal literacy, the leader served as a facilitator for state government initiatives and a guest lecturer on law and management topics. Hello and welcome, sir.
Hi, Sakshi. Thank you. Hi, Sarthak.
So without me wasting much time, let's quickly delve into the questions. So my first question is to you, Dr. Dharni. What are the main mental health challenges men face when involved in PoSH cases as victims, respondents, or as witnesses?
That's a very good question, Sakshi, in the sense that, we always think that, the problems for women and men are different. I think in terms of harassment, as victims, men also face the same kind of stigma, trauma, isolation, and, a fear of loss of everything, right? Why have they come into this world? The existential questions start to come in. And as victims, you will notice that men, at least over a period of time, I've noticed that men have even more trauma sharing it with anybody else. And talking to somebody about it. That is the biggest task that they have at their hand, and it's extremely Herculean for them to even move to any stage or any platform or write an email from their own email ID. So it's a very traumatic situation that they go through in, primarily because It's still a patriarchal society that we live in, and there are certain standards and expectations that men are supposed to have. They are not supposed to be harassed. They are never supposed to be a victim. You cannot even cry. Oh, men can't cry, right? Boys don't cry. Things like that have been pushing them towards a point where they believe that it's their right not to showcase their emotions. And, being a victim, the biggest harassment that they're facing is, apart from the physical harassment which they must have gone through, is the emotional and psychological harassment that they've gone through, and the trauma that it has on their mental functioning and day-to-day activities. When it comes to victims, it's slightly different in terms of how they handle things. Firstly, they have a kind of uh, you know god's complex kind of a thing, or a kind of a, they feel like they have the willpower and the, wherewithal to support and do anything and save a damsel in distress if they're a witness to some kind of a sexual harassment. And it's very important for, internal committee members to understand that we don't want somebody who can come and save somebody. We just want them to state the facts. So as witnesses, what I have observed is there's a lot of, oh, I'm trying to do a lot of service by doing this witness. I'm going beyond my usual thing. I'm doing so much for the women folk or the women in distress. Whereas the immediate thing is, if I'm going to do this, am I able to support the women? That is the change. Majority is what I'm telling you about. There's also a section who actually thinks that, okay, this is a support, okay, you need me, I'll be there, give the facts, get on with life, instead of, making that the entire focus of that particular time of their life. And when it comes to respondents, uh, unfortunately, the mental condition is still very defensive. I have not done it. It's the woman who has caused me to do this. It's the situation which made me do this. There is nothing wrong with me. There is a leading cause for me to do this. The rationale is so and so, and they go ahead and find reasons. We men find reasons everywhere, right? But within us, I think that shows even in the case of a PoSH case which is filed against them. That's the usual reaction. Slowly, when facts are faced, they're shown, prima facie evidence is shown, and some kind of then they start opening. Oh, okay, I didn't think about it this way. Still, the conversation is extremely defensive, argumentative, and there's a sense of ownership that they have over everything that precedes as a process, saying, no, this is not the way it is supposed to be done. This is not the way our tradition works. This is not what we do in our company. They quote history and they quote examples, and suddenly their achievements come into focus. I've been the best employee. I have the, uh, a chairman's award or a gold medal ribbon from the sales committee, things like that. Whatever they've done for the company have contributed to the success. And then they try to trivialize what happened, right? In order to showcase themselves as, as not a, perpetrator, but somebody who just happened to be there and something happened. It's a mistake. It's an error, rather than an intentional, harassment activity. So different kinds of mindsets to deal with different kinds of, positions that men are generally placed in.
Very true. I literally agree with everything that you've said. Being seated in internal committees, gone through investigations, especially when it comes to witnesses, as you said, we as a trainer, I literally have to tell this in employee awareness sessions that you all need not be macho man, go and save the women. Just standing up for that women really helps at times. So thank you so much for that answer. Our next question is to you, Sarthak. How can organizations create a supportive environment for men to speak up about their mental health during harassment investigations?
I think this is a very important question to have, considering we all are embedded in corporate environments and companies. I think the first point that comes to mind is to normalize mental health discussions by making sure that they're integrated into the culture itself, providing training for every employee, including leaders, especially leaders on emotional intelligence and the importance of psychological safety for every single gender. Men tend to often be harassed by people in positions of power, which can make reporting even more intimidating because of concerns around retaliation or possibly lack of trust in the reporting process. So it's important for organizations to ensure that anonymity and confidentiality is maintained when men share their mental health concerns. When the process is clear and judgment free, it reassures employees that speaking up will not harm their reputation and career. I think also assigning trained counselors who understand the challenges men face in speaking about vulnerability, that's important to be put in place. Making sure that there is a visibility within the leadership to offer support around this, where senior leaders and allies openly discuss the importance of mental health essentially, and that can help dismantle stigma associated with vulnerability in men. When I was researching on this subject a little bit more, I came across this really interesting program that Google has. It's called a Blue Dot program, and uh, it helps employees. They're trained in a way to be mental health allies for peers, and I think it's a very powerful initiative that they've done. And I believe this can be something that a lot of companies and workplace environments can use as inspiration to make these changes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sarthak. Next question is to you, Dr. Dharmi. What barriers prevent male victims of sexual harassment from coming forward, and how can companies address these challenges in a better way?
Yeah, once I think as a follow-up, basically they are in a certain mindset, right? As we have discussed. Now, the barriers and the reasons for that is first and foremost is the reputational damage that they believe that they will get, right? Everybody lives in this premise that they are the hero of their own movie, right? Men and women alike. In men, the feeling is a little bit more stronger that they're not, whether it be house in a personal life or whether it be in a professional life, we do live in a patriarchal society, and they do understand and they start believing in the fact that they are a hero. And once you believe that you are the protagonist in your entire story, nobody else, right? Everything that's happening is being done for them or against them. There is no middle path. So what that results in is only one way of direction. So the pathway is only towards saving their reputational damage, saving their shame, and doing something to make sure that it doesn't doesn't increase. So as a result of that, what happens is their every action only complexes the matter much more. We don't have a habit of saying, okay, yes, this is done. I've done this. I'm sorry about it. Whatever the repercussions are, I will face them. Right? Instead of that, you go on harping on the fact that, I want to protect it, because the mindset is that, I have a reputation. I need to protect it. I cannot allow anything else to come in between me and my image, which I have built. I need to live up to the image. And as I said, at a certain point of time, they start believing the fact that the image is them. That is when it gets more dangerous. And I've seen that the higher the position in professional life, the difficult and the tougher it is for the men to understand that they have done something wrong. It's not easy at all. They've done something wrong, but at the same time, it's not easy at all for them to take that forward in any way. Addressing that becomes a very big challenge.
As you say, I can literally connect each of your sentences to one case that I've been there through, and the respondent, how they were behaving. And literally so true. And so, like, I can literally connect with it.
Right.
Thank you so much for that. Do you want to add something, sir?
Yeah, I wanted to ask if there are some, companies, they can address these challenges. Firstly, I think in true sense, in the value that I pick is genuine. If the companies and the leadership and the management are genuine in their efforts of actually promoting prevention of sexual harassment at workplace against women and men, they should start looking at issues in a way that women will look at and the minorities will look at, right? The other genders will look at, not just the men. And for that to happen, we need to start having majority of women in leadership positions. No, as long as that is not going to be there, you will see that the policies such as this are not going to be given the same importance as a bottom line would be, as profits would be given, as getting an award for being the best innovative company or so and so would be, right? So I think the change and the mindset should start from being genuine, and it starts at the top, not at the bottom. Just wanted to add.
Thank you. Thank you so much sir, for that. Startup, my next question is to you. How can HR and management teams provide mental health support to male respondents during the investigation process?
I think during the investigation process aspect is very key here to talk about, because this is a particularly sensitive stage. And I think what HR and management teams can do is offer access to mental health professionals who are neutral, who specialize in trauma and stress management, and they can help respondents navigate their emotions without any fear of bias. It's also possible that a respondent can get angry in response to an allegation and defensively react to the situation. So, to minimize something like this, HR teams can create support protocols for respondents that can ensure that they're informed of the process and their rights, and that they have available resources and support to defend themselves. Emphasizing procedural fairness can minimize uncertainty and anxiety and retaliation against PoSH cases. I also think HR executives and supervisors should be encouraged to frequently check in with the respondents, so that that ends up humanizing the process a little bit and makes the respondents not feel isolated or discouraged. Um, a key point that comes to mind when I think about this question is also that respondents need to understand the distinction between intent and impact. And there are instances where a person's words or actions were not intended to be deliberately inappropriate, yet that had a negative impact. And ensuring a safe space where respondents can be educated on these nuances can help prevent further instances, because they have a better understanding of how to distinguish between these two concepts. Um, Making sure that there are measures to prevent hostility towards the respondent, especially in cases of deliberate misconduct, because I think the focus should be on rehabilitation, and it's important to keep that in mind for respondents who have made a mistake as well. Avoiding language, I think, comes to mind for me, where and language or actions that assume guilt. So, for instance, saying something like, "Why did you do that?" which already implies wrongdoing rather than seeking clarification during an ongoing investigation. It could be reworded as, "Can you explain your perspective?" Or saying stuff like, "This behavior is not acceptable here," which conveys judgment before the investigation has concluded. And it can be reworded as, "We are committed to reviewing this matter thoroughly and fairly." So that maintains fairness. I've heard of instances where respondents are spoken to with the language where they're told, "We need to move this case forward quickly," which is perceived as prioritizing resolution rather than fairness. So I think that needs to be changed and reworded as, "Hey, we aim to ensure a balanced and thorough investigation within a reasonable time frame." um, Actions that may impact them negatively, like separating the respondent from the team without communication, or excluding them from discussions or decision making that's unrelated to the investigation altogether, using hostile or punitive tone during interactions, restricting their access to workplace tools. I think these are things to keep in mind for HR and management teams, especially during an ongoing investigation.
It's very true, Sarthak. And as you said, the HRs and the ICs, I think at the very beginning, if they make an effort to understand what are the traits of the respondent, what is he going through, like we do suggest, like let's get that person into counseling, because we think they need it. But then there are certain organizations who be like, let's look at it in the later stage. Having said that, some actually pay attention to it and make sure that there's counseling session. And if there's a proper counseling session happening, the outcome, the the way the person perceives the recommendation, intakes the recommendation, understands the IC stand on it is way better. So rightly said. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. The next question is to you, Dr. Dharni. What specific mental health support mechanisms can be tailored to male victims, respondents, and witnesses in PoSH cases?
Yeah. Let me just piggyback on what Sarthak was saying, right? And you were talking about the counseling services and all. I'll just give you a small example what happened just a few hours ago. So I was at lunch, work lunch. I was meeting with some people there was actually a case being discussed, and suddenly somebody said, okay, there's this person who acts like a crazy chap. They want to go to a mental hospital for treatment. And this is coming from a very well-educated, DEI leader and who knows everything and all that. And I immediately stopped them and said, there were 7, 8 of us at the table. I said, I don't think that's a term we use anymore, at least in the corporate circles, in the white collar jobs. That's not what we refer them to as. So that should change. You won't believe it, but this is what I undergo everywhere I go. So if somebody who has a mental issue is approaching, for example, if somebody wants to come and ask Sakshi, Dharni wants to ask Sakshi, I'm not feeling okay about all this. I'm too stressed. Do you know somebody whom I can go for counseling for? And Sakshi says, hey, ye to mental hospital lega jana padega. That's the mindset that needs to change in the organization. And it is not that if you go for counseling, it will not be a taboo. You will not be stamped that you have a mental problem. You have a health issue, just like you have a physical health issue. You are unwell, and that's what is important. You don't need anything else at all. Right, Sakshi? Sure. Now, in the counseling services, what I'd like to see is a counselor who can be available on call. I'm a big fan of the EAP services, but at the same time, I also know that the statistics of EAP services being used by men for mental health counseling is abysmally low. Abysmally low. In an organization, you have 100 calls being made, 10 or 12 will be made by men, and I'm talking about an entire year. Not even 10%. And that too, mostly for inquiring about others' health, for themselves to just recognize and say, I need mental health counseling, I need some support. It's not happening for 2 reasons. Primarily, the avenues available to find a mental health professional who can actually address the issues are not that open and freely available, even though Google is there, even though you have Practo and other apps which you can use for a mental health professional. The success rates to reach the doctors through those media are very less. Secondly, the men do not identify that there is a mental health issue. So unless you know that there's a problem, you wouldn't go for a solution, right? So that is another very big issue. Now coming to witnesses, for witnesses and and for the victims collectively, there can be a support group mechanism. If there are support groups existing, not in an organization, maybe inter-organizational, maybe something Kelp HR can think about, maybe Indian Lawyers Association can think about, having a support group where people can just come, talk about what is bothering their mental health, and then just listen to people and go, right? Maybe online, maybe in person, maybe according to the chapters that ILA has, right? Something like that would work wonders, because then there is also a probability of being anonymous. You can join as an anonymous person and speak, understand, listen, and get back. And the approach is also very limited. Coming to respondents, what they need is mentoring. You need to understand that even though the person is respondent, you need to treat them on par with an employee. You are not a police. You cannot do policing activity, nor can you do moral policing. Don't judge the people. Give them an opportunity to explain themselves, understand them, why they have done that. And until proven guilty, they stand innocent. stick by it and be genuine about it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. That really helps. As you said, that's the first thing actually we explain to the IC members during trainings, that you need not be moral policing the parties to the complaint. Just be neutral. And that is so important. And as you said, support groups or also organizations just quietly slipping into their employees' mailbox and just saying that the organization provides this. Anonymous, your identity will be anonymous. Just go, take that support if you need. I think these reforms will really help employees cope up with mental stress. Thank you. Thank you so much. Next question is to you, Sarthak. What impact does societal pressure to be strong have on men's mental health during PoSH cases?
This is a question I'm extremely opinionated and passionate about answering. I think societal expectations and constructs have since time immemorial pressured men to be strong and self-reliant and emotionally stoic. And the damage it can end up doing is it discourages them from expressing vulnerability or seeking help because that's perceived as a sign of weakness. It leads to them experiencing feelings of isolation, guilt, or frustration, especially during stressful situations like a PoSH investigation. They may avoid seeking help or appear indifferent, which can be also misinterpreted as a lack of remorse or seriousness, which worsens their psychological distress. um, this perception that men are typically perpetrators and not victims can also make it hard for male survivors to be taken seriously or to be believed in instances like this. I also think there is this big misconception again that men are always open to sexual advances, which can invalidate their experiences of harassment and make it difficult to identify inappropriate behavior. Our cultural norms fail to recognize that men can be harassed by both men and women, which leads to a lack of acknowledgement and support for male victims. There's so many internalized ramifications. Men who end up being harassed might struggle with guilt or self-blame. They question if their actions were misinterpreted or if they somehow invited the behavior. To fit into these societal norms, they minimize or rationalize their experiences to avoid confronting the emotional aspect of it. I think, personally speaking, as someone who's always been in touch with his emotions, I've struggled with this my whole life, really. I was always expressive. I was always, talking about how I was feeling. And despite all of that, I just always felt lonely and isolated and disconnected and confused because men around me were following a certain protocol that was expected from them, and that wasn't healthy for me growing up. And I think this is something that leads me to uh, talking about how the root of the problem is that we have to dismantle this deeply ingrained masculine conditioning that perpetuates these toxic behaviors in the first place. I mean, it requires challenging these norms where masculinity is equated with dominance and emotional suppression and entitlement. And when you foster a culture where men are encouraged to embrace empathy, express vulnerability, and respect from a very early age, we can mitigate these toxic patterns that lead to these harmful behaviors. And I think creating a shift like this will not only reduce instances of harassment, but also promote healthier relationships and workplaces that are built on mutual understanding and empathy and sensitivity and equality. And so that, I believe, is the root cause that we need to fix when it comes to societal conditioning.
Very true, Sarthak. As you said, like shifting that mindset from just being strong to being a human, I think that will change the entire ecosystem after a point. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Next question is to you, Dr. Dharni. How can organizations reduce stigma around men's mental health, especially in the context of sensitive investigations?
Yeah, I think the answer is very simple. Awareness, awareness, and more awareness. And you can think about different ways to do it, right? You don't need to have a classroom session. I've known organizations which did street plays. I mean, not on the street, but in their cafeteria. They had an open forum, and when I meant an open forum, they had an amphitheater kind of a setting where anybody could just speak about anything that they faced, which caused them mental hurt. And people were surprised to see the answers that came out, right? And you'll be surprised that men also want to talk. But they won't talk unless you push them. Like Sardak was rightly saying, you will not be able to see majority of the men saying, hey, I have a mental health problem. Whom do I reach out to? You need to nudge them, come on, come on, come on, come on. And finally they'll say, okay, yes, I have something to share. Is it okay to share? And then you nudge them and nudge them. Now, the second thing is, you have campaigns, you have programs, you can have all this. And like you said, virtual campaigns, you can send out emailers, you can have support groups like I mentioned, but also have support groups. I'm yet to see organizations which have men at Microsoft or men at Facebook or men at Hyderabad IT. There's everything for women. There's everything for the other genders, but I've not seen that. Maybe I have not seen that. There may be, but that shows that that's a minority, right? It's not a majority. I'll give you another example, which I've been through, right, very recently. I am a class parent for my class, and I have a 14-year-old son. I've been being a class parent for my school for a long time. So all the sections will have one parent representative, and all the parent representative of all classes have a meeting with the leadership of the school to discuss on a monthly basis. Every time I go there, I am the only man there, and it's all women. It doesn't feel okay to be a minority, and that's when I started respecting women more and how they might be feeling on a day-to-day basis. I feel once in a month, that too when I go for an hour, right? So at the same time, there is no conscious effort on any leadership to take care of the minority in that group. What is the problem is we generalize things. We say men are a majority, so they don't need to be taken care of. They take care of themselves. I think we need to address small, simple situations where in a group, if you have more people of one gender or the other gender, or people who don't identify with any gender, then you need to make sure that they are given that voice to talk. Same way with age. If you have a lot of people with a senior age or a junior age in one group and there's one or two people outside it, inclusiveness starts at that point. You need to be more inclusive and show it in your processes and your methods of handling it. The other thing is you need to assure people of keeping their secrets as secrets. Men are, as Sardak was mentioning, as I was mentioning, as you were confirming it, we are very, very picky. We are a different species altogether when it comes to our secrets. We don't like sharing. Secrets, never. We'll die with our secrets that we have about our friends, but we will never share them. About us, forget about it. We'll not even share with our best friends, right? There should be a mechanism to make the men feel comfortable that they can share things, that they can tell things, and it will be kept confidential, and not just by giving a being a wordsmith and just supporting it vocally, but showing it in action, showing them, okay, this is a box, you send it here, nobody's going to access it except this 1-2 people, and we'll make sure that nobody knows about it. And once that reputation builds, you'll have more people opening up and more people talking and all that. Otherwise, it's very, very difficult to do that. Then the a lot of things like you need to address the problem, not the person. Several times what we do is we tend to respond to the individual. We forget that we need to address the problem and find a solution for the problem, and ultimately the issue will be solved. And you cannot treat everybody on the same level. You need to understand each individual and have a case-by-case mechanism. Yes, you can have a base, but then how you deal with each person should be different. Otherwise, you are violating the basis of equality. Equal should be treated equally, and unequals should be treated unequally. So these are a few of them. I can go on, but I would like to pass it back to you, Sakshi.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So that was really helpful. The examples were really helpful. Thank you so much. Next question is to you, Sarthak. What practical steps can companies take to include men's mental health in their PoSH policy?
I think when it comes to policy, it's important to introduce a section that's dedicated to addressing mental health support for all parties involved, which includes respondents and without bias. providing sensitization training for internal committee members on best practices for conducting investigation, which should include guidance on maintaining neutrality, avoiding leading questions, and ensuring that both parties are treated with respect and dignity. The training should also highlight common pitfalls like making assumptions or using accusatory language or displaying bias. That's important to make sure that it's a fair and impartial process. Providing equal access to counseling and stress management tools for all genders, and emphasizing on the all genders aspect so that men feel included in such initiatives. Gender neutral policies end up creating an inclusive baseline, and tailored employee resource groups can offer safer spaces for discussions and peer support and targeted mental health programs which help mitigate stress and reduce the stigma around seeking help. A critical point I also want to mention is that PoSH training should be simultaneously supplemented with training modules on gender sensitization, queer visibility, and dismantling unconscious biases, because this can help employees understand diverse perspectives. They can challenge stereotypes that exist and foster empathy towards people who are not like them. When you address an intersectionality of gender, sexuality, and power dynamics, these trainings create a more inclusive workplace where all individuals feel respected and safe. Uh, Also, regularly evaluating and updating these PoSH policies is important when feedback comes from male employees. So you're up to date with new developments that are more relevant as time goes on.
As you said, I would like to inform you as well that there are organizations who do this now. So we had a very recent request wherein this organization asked us to include sexism in sexual harassment trainings so that, they communicate to their employees that sexism, if go unnoticed, that escalates to sexual harassment. So it was a request from their end before their employee awareness training that can we do this? Can we call out sexism? So somewhere or the other, it has started. I think I know there's a long way to go, but it has started. So thank you. Thank you so much, Sarthak, for that. Next question is to you, Dr. Dharni. How can leaders encourage open dialogue about men's mental health in the workplace to foster a more inclusive culture?
I think this is related to what we have discussed all this while. And if you can picture an organization, say it has 2,000, 3,000 employees, okay? And out of that, 60% are men and 40% are women, right? And the leadership comprises of, 10 people. 8 of them are men and 2 of them are women. I think these 10 leaders need to come together and come up with an intentional framework to support men's mental health. And I'll tell you why I say that, right? I don't say that just for the sake of saying it or you ask me a question. It's very, very, deep, because you see the National Crime Report data. 77% of the men who have been asked whether they have mental health problems have said yes. In 2023, of all the suicides committed, 72.91% of suicides committed are male. That means in 2023 alone, 73,900 men committed suicides more than women. It is going unnoticed. If the same thing happened because of communal violence, because of rash and negligent driving, because of a viral disease, oh my God, the news channels would have been flooded with that information and sensationalized it. We would have come up with a virus, antivirus, and whatnot. But when it comes to mental health, nobody, absolutely nobody says the nation wants to know, or can I add on to this? Nothing of that sort. No premier media channels nor social media is concerned about it. I think the leaders of every organization need to start taking this seriously and intentionally, and more so in this day and age. We are already late. If we don't catch the bus now, the bus is going to go hit some ditch. So that's one. Secondly, once you have the policy, okay, I've made the policy, I'll relax now. No, the intent should go one step further. You need to hire professionals to take care of some jobs. If you are a software company, your job is not to take care of mental health. You hire somebody who can work with you to create mental health facilities for men. You get it done by a professional job. Why, when you have to build toilets or you have to come up with a cafeteria, why do you go to an interior designer or a plumber? Why don't you do it internally? When it comes to mental health, you will form a subcommittee and then, ask some consultant to come and give a lecture once in a year and it's over. I think that needs to change. You need to have a policy, yes, but you also need to back it up with actions. And then have some rewards and recognize people, rewards for accessing mental health facilities. It need not be, chocolates and bouquets. It can be an email from the leadership saying, you've been brave enough and courageous enough. Spread the word, and it's not a taboo, right? If you communicate the message effectively, have some kinds of rewards and recognitions, it will work wonders. But I believe we are already too late. We need to have started this yesterday.
True, sir. Very true. As you said, I can give an example on that. The very recent PoSH investigation that we attended, we gave out a recommendation to the respondent, and we could see that the respondent was not okay with whatever recommendation was provided. And we, as an external member, we suggested that let's do counseling session for this person. He needs it. And there was this one IC member who said, I can do that. He was a sales representative of that organization, and we had to step in and say, no, sir, I don't think we are an appropriate body to do that for that person. A proper professional help will definitely help that person to go beyond this and start a new journey when it comes to his life. So I think that's very important to call it out and let people know that this was your duty, you did it well. But beyond this, if there's a professional help needed, we definitely need to call that out as well.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. The next question is to you, Sarthak. How can organizations provide effective mental health support to respondents after a PoSH decision, especially when outcome is unfavorable and the individual shows signs of self-harm or suicidal ideation? So I've been through this. There was this investigation when after we provided the recommendation, this man literally said that if you say something against me or if you tell me to leave or anything like that, I'll self-harm. I'll do something for myself. So how do we make a path out of it? How do we tell him that this is necessary as per law and this is what we have been recommended to do, but we also want to make sure that you as a person are doing well after this?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, you establish a crisis intervention protocol that includes immediate referral to trained mental health professionals or crisis hotlines when there are signs of self-harm or suicidal ideation. HR teams must follow up consistently with affected employees to ensure that they feel supported rather than ostracized, regardless of the outcome of the investigation. I think a reintegration program is necessary to help individuals rebuild trust and confidence in the workplace, where, like I had said before, the focus should be on rehabilitation and not alienation. Mandating counseling can help provide a chance for this individual at corrective behavioral change and smoother assimilation back into the workplace. Managers should be trained to recognize red flags when they see withdrawal or noticeable behavioral changes and then act compassionately, but while maintaining professional boundaries. Um, Peer support system, I think, is a big one here, where employees should find a sense of camaraderie and understanding, assign a buddy to them, or make sure that they have a space where they don't feel isolated and disconnected. Uh, Another thing that can happen in a situation where there is an unfavorable outcome is that other employees can possibly end up creating a hostile environment for the individual who's involved. And I think it's crucial to sensitize them against this. It's important to make sure there's structured communication and there's an emphasis on workplace professionalism and discouragement of gossip or ostracization again. If necessary, consider changing their team or reassigning the roles so there is a fresh start while maintaining this person's dignity and emotional well-being. I think these are really important things to keep in mind when the outcome doesn't work out as they had hoped.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sarthak. So with that, we complete our questions. I would like to open the floor for our participants to answer to questions, like question up our panelists, question me. You can do that.
I think there are already a couple of questions, Sakshi. you
The
hope
chat
I can take
box.
that up. Yeah.
Yes.
I think
So,
first one is from Savita
yes.
Sholapurkar.
So she says that is there any employer's responsibility normally observed by organizations to take care of men's mental health?
I think there is. Now, I mean, after having said all that, I should say that there has been definitely a recognition of the fact that there should be something done for taking care of mental health of men. But, what needs to be done, I think they should, fall back on professional organization and consulting organization, probably like Kelp HR, or, they have a lot of other, men's health organizations as well to support that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. We have another question from Jaya Tiwari. She says that I am from an organization, a charity foundation, and there are 80% women and 20% men. In this case, how senior management should make sure men does not feel threatened by the PoSH Act itself?
Yeah, it's very similar to the example which I had, right? So I think make sure that you don't overdo it. This is something which I always advise, especially in organizations where you are saying that the majority are women. You can have one poster. So there's this organization where I had conducted a training, and after that, suddenly the internal committee got so excited that they had 10 or 15 posters on every floor, right? And then they had emailers going out on a weekly basis, and then their cafeteria was always giving out audio and video bites. They had an AV system, and they were giving out, prevention of sexual harassment is a reality. Please make sure that nobody is harassing. I'm like, I think you overdid it, right? So please be conscious of the fact not to overdo anything with respect to women's empowerment rights, or anything related to sexual harassment when the women are a majority in that particular organization. Yes, mention it, address it, but be conscious about the fact that there are men in it, and give them the first opportunity to talk. Give them the first right of refusal for projects, and so on and so forth. Whatever you would do for women in a normal organization, do it for the men, and do it consciously. I think there will be a lot of change.
I think you very rightly said that overpowering one usually surpasses the other. So I
Yeah.
think it's very important to make a conscious effort of doing these things for both the genders. Anybody
I would,
else?
no, I would go further to say, we might be conservative, we still are, but don't just stop at both genders. Look at genders. Let's not even say one or two genders. Let's just say genders and leave it at that, and let it evolve on its own, so that people can come up and speak.
I also want to add something that if there is a situation where men feel threatened by the PoSH Act itself, then I feel like there's a larger conversation to be had around why there is a feeling of being threatened, and an open dialogue around what that means, and a culture where there is dismantling of what is leading to these feelings. And no matter what the structure of the organization is, I think this is important to, like Dr. Dharni said, it's important for no, it shouldn't be limited to a binary gender understanding, but it should be across all gender identities. And nobody should feel threatened, because it's something that we want to change at a systemic level, and that requires you to also unlearn some of the things that you've grown up with. And if you are feeling threatened, then talk about it, and be open to being educated. I think that's important to keep in mind as well.
Absolutely, Sarthak. I think, there was this telecalling program helpline which was started for, mental health problems. I think it was called Telemanas or something. And over a period of 2 years or something, it launched in October sometime in 2022. And they had around 3.5 lakh calls, 350,000 calls. Of that, 60% of them are men. And in the 60% also, if they've gone ahead and dissected, they're seeing that the age group is between 16 and 48, that covers almost 75% of them. So the majority, so we need to address it from an age perspective as well. When is it that men are facing this problem in an organization? You have different age strata, and I think the most common one would be between 21 and 35, right? 21 and 40. So make sure that they are given all kinds of avenues to open up, and providing a hotline is very easy nowadays. Anonymous call, just ask people, if you have a mental health problem, just call on this number. And if you give them that facility, like Swiggy, before they had a one-click payment process, they were not making profits, right? Once it became a one-click thing, the number of times people order has increased. Similarly, if you have an app with a one-click, or if you have a phone call with a one-click, you will find that, people will actually reach out much more. Facility actually empowers.
I think for this, we also need some young minds and open-minded people in the leadership group, as you said, who are vocal about it, who want to recognize mental health support for men and everyone. So I think it's very important.
There's another question, Sakshi.
Yes.
Banu Satish.
I think it's very similar to the first one. So she's saying, if there's 10% female and 90% male, how can we ensure that the place is safe for women to work?
Which is same like any organization. Most manufacturing sector organizations are like this. I've noticed that the blue collar jobs are like this, and you will find a lot of majority of organizations like this. I think make sure that the women are given that additional intentional, space to work and talk. You don't leave them to fend for themselves. Don't expect them to come to you with a problem. You go to them and keep inquiring on them. Similarly, work as well. Just don't divide it. Say, okay, you all get it done. If you have 10 men and 90 women, 10 women and 90 men, just don't say, just get it done. Specifically, intently divide the work in a way that women are also included. Make sure that you go to a party where there are facilities for all the genders, not just for men, right? And make sure that in every communication, in every organization of an activity or an event in the office or a project work or a celebration, you put them at the forefront. Maybe an office picture, maybe a cake cutting, maybe a celebration, maybe a festival. Make it intentionally known and make it with all inclusivity and genuineness.
Having said that, I had few friends who recently said that in our organizations for Women's Day, there was so much of celebration and gifts. And for us, they just gave us a samosa and a drink.
That's a very important point, Sakshi. Yesterday, I think, was International Men's Day, right?
A day before yesterday.
Day before yesterday, right?
19 November.
I'm part of a probably 100 WhatsApp groups, except my own mother-in-law. Nobody even sent a message saying it's Happy International Men's Day. Even I didn't, know about it. Probably, I think that's where we are. At least now there's one person in my contacts who has wished me, right? Probably next year there'll be more. I think we should, give it that kind of time and, push that we have given other things as well.
I think even the PoSH Act clearly says that you have to comply, organizations have to comply with the act if there are 10 or more employees. So there's nowhere mention of female employees. So I think organizations have to buck up and do things for all the genders. Thank you. Thank you so much for the whole session.
Yeah.
Any closing statements by you two? It would be great.
I just wanted to give a famous quotation by Vincent van Gogh. He said it long, long ago that, the heart of a man is very much like the sea. It has its storms, it has its storms, it has its tides, it has its ebbs, it has its depths, but it also has its pearls. So, somebody needs to understand, and we need to, circulate and let everybody know about it. Awareness that men's health is a major issue. And if not touched upon, it will affect the entire society. Thank you so much.
Doctor, I had put a question in the chat before the session. Did anybody able to find out? It was not in the...
I'm sorry, sir. I cannot see any question by you.
Yeah, Suresh, in fact, in that registration itself, I put it. Do you want me to share the question again? In the registration itself, I asked a question.
No, you can share the question again.
As doctor was rightly saying, so today, I'm just talking about a live case from a neighbor organization. The driver was just driving and was using some kind of songs or something. Immediately, the female employee charged a case against him to HR, and the HR said to terminate driver. So it's all more of supporting the female ecosystem. So in this kind of scenario, what will be your pearls of wisdom?
So I think it's a specific case, Suresh sir. I've been specifically advised not to advise on cases when we are discussing these because of the legal scenarios that we are in. We need to examine everything in detail. But in general, I would say, two principles of natural justice where I follow for all my investigations. Audi altrum partem, listen to everybody and do not be a judge in your own case. make sure that you don't have any personal bias towards anybody when you're making your judgment. And using that, I think it can be solved. Sakshi.
Fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Sarthak. Thank you, Dr. Dharmi. Thank you so much for, gracing us with your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Sakshi. Thank you, Kelp, HR and ILA. Thank you so much. Bye, Sarthak.
Okay, bye-bye.
Everybody.
Bye, sir. Bye. Bye, Sarthak. Thank you.